Biden's back. Oh, I know. The last thing you want to hear. Good morning, 6:05. Happy Friday. Glad you're joining us to wrap up the week on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on that KCMO Talk Radio app. You can listen there as well if you're not in the car near a radio. So this is a gift to the President of the United States. You know, we have very short-term memories. We forget a month ago, never mind 6 months ago, never mind a year ago. We just forget. We just, it's just how we're programmed. We got these phones I'm holding up in my hand. I mean, we're stuck in these things all the time, and we just don't have a great concept of time anymore. And we don't want to remember what happened yesterday or last week or last month or last year. We just want to live in today. It's not good. It's not healthy, but it's kind of how we're programmed right now. So when Joe Biden shows up on The View yesterday and starts pointing fingers and making no sense and looking like he's totally lost in La La Land, it is a massive reminder, I believe, to millions of Americans who were not sitting there watching The View, okay, because nobody does. Our good friend Harris Faulkner is now beating The View on Fox News, on cable news, when The View, of course, is on broadcast TV. But it's a reminder to millions of people who might be sitting there every day and just potentially exhausted by Trump to some degree. This is a great reminder of why you voted for Donald Trump. When Joe Biden gets on, I was going to say the stage with The View, but it's not a stage. It's a little, semicircle table. Sitting there, and he's talking about Kamala Harris and how the only reason Kamala Harris lost was because they played the race card and because they played the gender card. It's like, no, this is the reminder that some people needed.
Why do you think the vice president lost, and were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, not because I didn't think the vice president was the most qualified person to be president. She is. She's qualified to be president of the United States of America. Right. But I was surprised. I wasn't surprised because they went the route of the sexist route, the whole route. I mean, this is a woman. She's this. She's that. I mean, it really. I've never seen quite as successful and a consistent campaign undercutting the notion that a woman couldn't lead the country and a woman of mixed race. Yeah. And they played that to a fairly well. In addition to
big sigh. It's Friday. I'm not going to get upset. No reason to. All right. The guy lost. He's got his wife holding his hand on national television because he can't answer questions on his own.
He's a troubled guy.
There's nothing to be upset about. Just let it be a reminder. Okay. Kamala Harris did not lose because of her race. We've elected a black president. Okay. Kamala Harris did not lose because she was a woman. In fact, if you want to talk about who was playing the race card and who was playing the gender card, it wasn't Donald Trump. It was Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was the one who was leaning into the racial card and the gender card far more than Donald Trump ever did, John.
Did you vote the right way, dear?
Yeah.
Right? Remember these commercials? Those maybe not as much to do with Kamala, but just the whole party. It's like, come on, talk about weaponizing the whole gender thing.
Oh, man. I am glad that they got to a point where they would remember what a man is and what a woman is. That was always, a nice place to be when we were, rolling the clock back to a time when we could identify a man and a woman. So I won't say no to that. That was some normalcy, I suppose. But there was nothing about that election that was about Donald Trump saying, you can't vote for a woman. You definitely can't vote for a woman of color. No, you can't vote for Kamala Harris because she was wildly incompetent, brought nothing to the table, and was not up to the job. And then when she infamously was asked on The View a month before the election what she would do differently than Joe Biden, what did she say? Nothing. Nothing. Kamala Harris sunk herself. Wasn't her skin color, wasn't her gender. She had a honeymoon there for about a month, right? Right after Joe Biden handed off the reins to her. And then once we got to the fall, it started to peter out because she had to start doing media, and it went horribly for her.
And it still is.
And it hasn't gotten better.
She was on earlier this week, I think.
Yeah, no, she's been making the rounds, and it wasn't any good for her either. So for Biden to come on The View for really his first, I don't think he's done anything like this since, he hit the road back in late January. I'm just sitting there and saying to myself, this is exactly why people voted for Trump. Like, you don't have to love everything that Trump is doing to be reminded that, I'm glad I don't have that in charge. All right? I'm glad that we moved on from Joe Biden, Jill Biden. Sorry, that's Dr. Jill to you and me, and Kamala Harris. All right? I mean, this is the reminder that some people just seem to need. It is. Now, I wish that somebody would have asked Biden about, the 2,500 commuted sentences that include about 36 violent individuals who will be coming back to the Kansas City, Missouri area in the next couple of weeks. We reported on that yesterday. Something tells me we are not going to have local media following up on our story from yesterday that I've heard from law enforcement in this town who have confirmed to me that we have 31 violent criminals coming back, getting released into Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas at some point in the next couple of weeks. They have been tipped off by the feds saying, hey, these people are coming back to your communities because Biden commuted their sentences and now they're getting set to be released. This was done back in January, right as Biden was leaving office. And it was done because, well, they were at the time nonviolent drug offenders. But as was told to me by people in area law enforcement, oftentimes these are very violent people. But all they can get them on is nonviolent drug charges. So they get them on their nonviolent drug charges. The feds take care of it. And at least they end up where they should be, which is in prison, even if it's not for some of the heinous acts that local law enforcement believe that they have actually committed. You've got 30-plus people coming back, and it might not seem like a big number to you. That's a pretty, that's a substantial number of people now who can be terrorizing communities in and around Kansas City.
Well, the nonviolent drug thing, we now know we can gauge that by Maryland man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We have a barometer now.
Yeah. Jeez. I don't want to know a Kansas City man, okay? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Kansas City Star is going to run that headline. Please don't give them any ideas. When these people come back after having their sentences commuted and they're committing crimes, you're going to have Kansas City man does fill in the blank. And then, like, in paragraph 26 will be some line about, oh, yeah, this guy was just released courtesy of the former president of the United States, Joe Biden. That's right. Yeah, that's him.
Come on, man.
Yep. Same guy. I mean, I know the View's not going to go there, but just know that this guy and his awful policies are still having very negative impacts on Kansas City as a whole. 913-408-7957. So there was a big hire made yesterday in this town, and the backstory to it is fascinating because it did not play out as I predicted it was going to play out. And that's because people behind the scenes were working very hard. And actually, it's the best thing that could have happened for Kansas City. So I am glad I was wrong about this. We'll tell you what that is coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Kansas City hired a new city manager yesterday, and I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong on who the next city manager is. They have hired Mario, not Lopez, but Vasquez, to be the next city manager here in Kansas City, Missouri. And we told you about how last week there were 3 finalists who went to the interviews. And the front runner was Kimiko Gilmore. The problem for Kimiko Gilmore is she had a horrendous interview. And I spent way too much time in the airport this past weekend. I was coming to and from Boston to visit my brother for a quick trip. And I listened to these interviews, and Kimiko Gilmore was a mess. I mean, just it was Kamala Harris-esque on the word salad. There were no answers. There was nothing direct. There was nothing of substance. It was just Kamala Harris 2.0. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. It was stuff like that. And we talked about it on Monday. If you want to hear any of those clips, I mean, we went through a lot of them on Monday on the show. It's all in the podcast. You can find it there. Apple, Spotify, search Pete Mundo, and most of the show ends up on that podcast. So she did not do well at all. But she was the interim city manager. She replaced Brian Platt on an interim basis. There was also a push, remember, and this is not Kimiko Gilmore's fault, but there was a push to have Kimiko Gilmore in that top spot because some people at City Hall only see race. And they saw Kimiko Gilmore as a black woman, and there are people who wanted that in the city manager role who don't care about meritocracy. I'm not knocking her for that. That's not her fault. There are people who wanted her to maintain that top position for one reason, or I guess two reasons only: her gender and her race. I know that to be a fact. And that's why I thought she was ultimately going to get the job. Well, she didn't yesterday. She didn't. And that was a big surprise. So this guy, Mario Vasquez, gets the job to become Kansas City's new city manager to replace Brian Platt. And here's the thing. I was talking to some people inside of City Hall, and there were a lot of people who basically told him to not apply. They told him not to do it. Why? Because they told him that he was going to be treated poorly, and they told him it would get ugly, and they said Kimiko's going to get the job, so don't bother. Well, he bet on himself, and he won. And now he's going to be Kansas City's next city manager. There were a lot of people on city council who, once they saw these interviews and they were meeting privately with these finalists, they were like, this Kimiko can't do it. I mean, she just can't do the job. She doesn't really have a vision. She's not up to the task. Where you got to oversee 4,000 people in the workforce, and every city service, water, fire department, convention center, street maintenance, real estate development, regulations, planning. You got to do a lot in this role. And if you don't have the right person with the World Cup coming up next year, you're screwed. But this guy, Mario, has a great story. He worked from the bottom up, 54 years old. And he's somebody who, when you think about his background and his family, and this is somewhat highlighted in a Kansas City Star piece, but he was born in Bolivia, spent his entire adult life and career in Kansas City. As a child, he and his family moved to Wisconsin during what was called a time of economic distress and turmoil in their home country. Yeah, what happened in his home country? They escaped communism in Bolivia. It's not going to make the media rounds here in Kansas City, but it should. That story right there. And yes, for those of you wondering, came here, family did all legally, green card, became a U.S. citizen in 2004. But what's amazing to me is somebody at City Hall told me that they basically were, the black community was treating Mario Vasquez like he was a white dude. And there were people who just didn't want him, because they were so hung up on the racial components of the next city manager, which is insane, absolutely insane. I can't fathom a world where you're picking a city manager based on their skin color, as if that person's going to do anything for anybody based on skin color, as if that is at all a qualification for the job. But I'm telling you this because these are the people who, unfortunately, have way too much power in this town. Now, thankfully, they lost out, and that's in part because their preferred candidate did such a bad job in the interview, they really had no choice. I'm not taking anything away from Mario, but that's just a fact. She bombed out, and even they realized we can't save her here, and she's not up for the job. So, in the end, I'm happy the person who appeared to be the most competent got the position. I look forward to having him on the show. Hopefully he can tell some of his story that the rest of Kansas City media will not, because I do think it's a fascinating story. And now Kansas City has to move on, full steam ahead. And Lord knows there's a lot of problems that have to be figured out here, including the continuing crime issue. So last night, this was an email I woke up to this morning. Security guards at about 11th and Wyandotte were patrolling the area just after 2:30 a.m. when they found a dead man in a downtown parking garage early this morning. Adult male, 11th and Wyandotte. You're talking right down the road from the Marriott Hotel. Now, they don't stay there anymore, but before the Lowe's Hotel went up, that's where all the Big 12 basketball teams would stay for the Big 12 tournament. They'd stay right there in that Marriott Hotel. And that's a prime part of downtown. That's not off the beaten path. I mean, you're right in the hub of it. That's a parking garage that if you're going down the T-Mobile, you may pop in there. You may use that parking garage if you're going to a concert or a show down there at T-Mobile. And now you've got Kansas City, Missouri police finding dead guys in the parking garage at 11th and Wyandotte early this morning, just 3.5, 4 hours ago now. So the death is now being investigated as a homicide. Investigators are working to determine what led up to the incident and what caused the victim's fatal injuries. Detectives are, as of this morning, canvassing the area for witnesses and surveillance footage. Anybody with information, obviously, is encouraged to contact the police and the TIPS hotline. So now we have this happening once again in primetime parts of Kansas City, in downtown. Could you imagine you're walking out of T-Mobile, you're going back to your parking garage. Whoa, great show. That was fantastic. Whoa, what is that?
Oh. Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. This is now what you're getting, right? And this is why Kansas City this week, unfortunately, the headline news has been all about the crime. You had the Daily Mail write its piece that got global attention a couple of days ago about the street racing, the drag racing, the violence that Kansas City is dealing with. And to cap off the week, to kind of put the icing on the cake of the week, we're sitting here on a Friday morning, and I'm waking up to this news that there's a dead man in a parking garage at 11th and Wyandotte around some of the most expensive and prestigious real estate in downtown.
New York Post has a story about the sideshows today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I'll
man.
find that for you.
Well, I know where we're going next here, John. We'll talk about that coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio, 913-408-7957. And also, somebody was hit on Southwest Boulevard by these drag racers, sideshows, everything else going on in that part of Kansas City. We'll get you the details on that coming up. Who did it better, New York Post or the Daily Mail? New York Post headline reading here. Hooligans on dirt bikes, ATVs, and souped-up cars overrun downtown Kansas City, terrorizing locals, John. That's quite a headline.
I like the overhead shot here on the Post.
Yeah, I know. That's a good one.
I'm like, what do we got there? There's like, gosh, I'm trying to count the cars real quick. At least 15 right there.
Yeah, easy. And then we've got this from the Daily Mail the other day. Midwest City's downtown is now Mad Max hellhole where locals are scared to go out after 8 p.m. I think Daily Mail takes the cake.
I like the Mad Max hellhole.
Me too.
Good phrase.
Well, the Brits have a way with words. Yeah. So if we're going to compare it that way, I see what you're saying.
They do. I would give the Daily Mail headline the win over the New York Post. I like the hooligans thing in the New York Post. Mm-hmm. They're trying to be somewhat polite in what they're calling these people. Hooligans, maybe the nicest thing they could call them.
Well, now, see, over in England, hooligans are soccer fans who get rowdy, so now we've got a whole thing going there.
Oh, that's a great point as well. Now, the Daily Mail had a follow-up to its piece on Kansas City. This is not good. They're going to lean into this because here's the deal. If these articles at the Daily Mail are getting clicks, they're going to keep writing them.
Oh, yeah.
The Daily Mail piece on the Mad Max-style hellhole that they referred to as Kansas City got 1,300 shares and 1,300 comments. So they're just doubling down. So yesterday, the Daily Mail writes here, Democrat mayor of Mad Max City gives appalling response to terrified locals who lock themselves indoors at 8 p.m.
That's rich, isn't it?
That's rich. That's a stretch. We know that's a stretch. I mean, listen, if you're a Kansas City resident, I don't think you'd lock yourself indoors when the clock hits 8 o'clock at night. Heck, it's still light out. But, I mean, they know how to write a headline at the Daily Mail.
Do they bring up the text messages?
Yeah, yes, they did. They were talking about Malik Jackson, Fox 4 here in Kansas City. And I will tease this. It's a ways away, but John Holt is going to be our Feature Friday guest.
Cool.
On behalf of Fox 4 because they've done a very good job on their reporting this week.
I'm scanning the Post article, and they quote Fox 4, they quote The Star, and they quote KSHB.
Okay. Well, clearly we need to send them our interview with the mayor yesterday as well.
There you go.
They need to get a hold of
that.
We should submit that to the Daily Mail and Fox 4 as well. So they write about how Quinton Lucas was very defensive in his back and forth with Malik Jackson of Fox 4. And this is, once again, this is why the mayor made a mistake here on all this. If you don't know the backstory here, there was an owner of a restaurant in the Crossroads who said that he texted the mayor about crime happening at his establishment over the weekend, and the mayor did not get back to him despite having a read receipt on the text message. The mayor says that he did not get the text. He came on this show yesterday and claimed that he talked to AT&T, and AT&T has no proof that he got the text. That's what he said yesterday right here on KCMO. Now, I'll be honest. I think he's spending way too much time on this. The fact that the mayor is reaching out to his cell phone company, which you know and I know, by the time you get to somebody, you've spent way too much time on the phone. Okay, I mean, I was trying to call a CVS yesterday. I'm like, can I get a damn person around here? Can a human being just pick up the phone, please? Never mind if you want to call AT&T or Verizon, forget it. I mean, you might wait days to get a hold of a human being at these places. So the fact that he went out of his way to call his cell phone provider to get proof that he did not get a text message from a business owner, I mean, it's just not worth his time. The easy thing to do if you're Quinton Lucas is just say, yeah, I got the text. I'm chasing two kids around. I'm putting them to bed. It's a Saturday, whatever. You've got an out. You're getting texts from everybody in Kansas City. He literally gave his cell phone number out on the air yesterday, right here on the show. At the end of the show, he gave his cell phone number out on the air. And then he put it up on Facebook yesterday as well. And I'm going to share a screenshot of his post on my Facebook, Pete Mundo. You can find it there. Not my personal. I mean, you could friend me if you want, but it's not going to be there. It's going to be on the show page, Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio. I will share that momentarily so you can see it. He posted his cell phone up for the entire city. Now, that's insane. I don't know why he does that. I know he's trying to be like the everyman, but, dude, I just stop. You're not helping yourself here. I appreciate what you're going for, but you're just going to get inundated with crap.
I just reposted it to our
Is
page
it
as well.
Is it on the KCMO page? All right, Good job there, Mark. So I saw that post. I'm like, man, he's really doubling down on this. And he's going after Fox 4 is what he's doing. He's ticked off at Fox 4. When the real problem is, obviously, the crime in this city. And I think there's some frustration that the media is leaning into this very, very heavily right now in this town. Actually, more heavily than I would have expected, to be totally honest. We've been on it for years. We've talked to the mayor every week now for over 5 years. And obviously, crime has been a big part of the conversation. They're now starting to figure out that people are fed up. And as Kevin Keatsman said yesterday here on KCMO, and I think he was right to point this out, there is a small part of you that says, what else is this guy by himself supposed to do? And he's not wrong. He's not wrong on that point. Keatsman made it yesterday. Like, there is only so much he can do. And the one thing that I said at the end of the show yesterday at 10 o'clock, and I want to make sure that that point is reiterated here, the biggest problem he's got, and the thing that he can't do anything about, is that he's got poverty that is driven by cultural rot. And there's only so much that any government can do about that. when you don't have fathers present, when you have moms raising children without fathers, working 2 jobs, relying on the government, dealing with poverty, and young men who oftentimes are unrestrained and end up with really bad male role models because dad is not around. And these individuals get caught up in crime and gangs and everything else. I mean, yes, you got to make sure that bad guys go to jail. And this city has not done a good job of that. There's no doubt about it. But there is only so much until you fix that cultural rot you're going to be able to do. Now, people like Quentin Lucas could be part of that change, right? Quentin Lucas, married man, 2 kids. You can, I think, walk into some of these places and say, let's have dads be dads again. Frankly, it was a huge missed opportunity on the national level for Barack Obama. Barack Obama, especially as the first black president, could have been the man to walk around some of these urban cores and say, you know what, dads, step up here, okay? Step up to the plate, be a man, be a father. Raise your children. Break this streak that is generational upon generational of just having poverty and having no dads and having high crime. Break the trend. Do it. He was the guy to do it. Instead, what did he do? He did the total opposite. He leaned in on the racial controversies. He talked about Michael Brown as a gentle giant, right? He said about Trayvon Martin, could have been my son. It's like, dude, that is not the thing. He could have been a transformational figure on this stuff, and instead, he preferred to be a huckster.
I don't think Obama what's his name? Barack. Yeah, I'm not sure Barack wears the pants in the Obama family is what I should say. I want to make sure I got it out right there. I should have waited until you were done. I apologize.
Yeah, I took a quick sip of coffee just to get my throat, massaged a little bit there. And then John breaks out a Big Mike joke on me at 6:44. So
that may be what happened there, historically speaking.
Maybe. You're right. Entirely possible. The top 6 stories at 6 o'clock we'll get to in the 6 at 6 coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. 1 hour from now, Steve Minnis, the president of Benedictine College, will be here to talk about, of course, the new Pope. V for Villanova. Yes, he's a Villanova graduate. So Steve Minnis, president of Benedictine, will be here at 7:50 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Congratulations to the Pope, and I hope that he helps the world. Well said by Bill O'Reilly. That's
a message.
That's a message. That's a good message from Bill. I hope he helps the world. Now, listen, that's where we should all be at right now. I'm not going to hyperanalyze his posts on X. Pete, this is on the text line, 913-408-7957. As a practicing Catholic conservative, I don't really care much about the politics of the Pope, so long as he leads the church based on proper doctrine and doesn't try to legislate from Rome like Pope Francis did. That's exactly right. That's it. I'm not a practicing Catholic, but that's what you should want from the Pope. That's it. And that's why Bill O'Reilly put it very well. Congratulations, and I hope he does well by the world. That's it. Now, meantime, we've got obviously an airline industry that is not in great shape. You had Newark Airport get a lot of attention there in New Jersey the last few days because airlines were taking off and going missing off the radar. Delays are horrible there. They've got an antiquated system, a lot of problems. We all know, of course, about what happened back in January with the plane flying from Wichita to Washington, D.C., and, of course, colliding with the Black Hawk helicopter. We're learning more about that in recent weeks as well. There have been multiple other incidents at various airports around the country that shows that the system needs to be revamped. And if it doesn't get revamped sooner than later, there will be more tragedies, sad to say. So the Trump administration announced yesterday that they are proposing a plan to replace the existing decades-old telecommunications, radio, and surveillance systems, which currently rely on things like copper wires and floppy disks with more modern technology. The plan also includes investing in new ground radar sensors on tarmacs and at airports, and a new flight management system and some new air traffic control towers and other facilities. Now, this will cost billions of dollars. But if we're not spending our tax dollars on this, what are we spending it on? I'm not a fan of taxes or more taxes or taxing people in general, but my goodness, like when I pay my federal income taxes every year, I would think that I should at least do it to help fund an airline system that gets me from point A to point B without having to worry about collisions, issues on tarmacs, floppy disks being used, which I haven't even seen a floppy disk in probably 25 years.
No kidding.
When's the last time you saw a floppy disk? 2001?
I don't know if you can get them anymore.
I don't think you can.
I'm like, where are these big companies? You want a DEI? Here's where you help the nation.
Yeah.
Could you put forth a few pieces of equipment for us here to help out the National Transportation and Safety Board?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
That'd be a great place to start, right? So Trump, as only Trump can yesterday, starts ripping on Pete Buttigieg, who was the former transportation secretary. And because they're saying, hey, this thing was a mess under Buttigieg. He didn't do anything outside of try to make sure the companies weren't making too much money. And also, of course, telling you that roads and bridges are racist. This guy was totally unqualified for the job. Mayor Pete had zero qualifications to run the Department of Transportation, but he got it anyway from Biden. He left this administration with another mess, and then Trump was poking him yesterday.
And when they took over, Buttigieg, who has no clue, he drives to work on his bicycle with his, in all fairness, with his husband on the back, which is a nice, loving relationship. But he didn't have a clue. This guy didn't have a clue. And he's actually a contender for president. Between him and Crockett, you can have that party. But, he didn't.
What did he call him?
And when they took over, Buttigieg.
Buttigieg. Booty bitty Buddha boo. Bada bing. Buddha edge. I mean, I don't know what he's calling him there, but jeez. Oh, but let's not forget that it was just June of 2022 that Buttigieg, as Trump just called him, launched a $1 billion first-of-its-kind pilot program aimed at helping reconnect cities and neighborhoods racially segregated or divided by road projects, pledging wide-ranging help to dozens of communities despite the program's limited dollars. That is the headline story from NPR, June 30th of 2022, 3 years ago. The airline system's collapsing. They're using floppy disks. What do we do, Mayor Pete? Let's spend $1 billion on reconnecting cities because roads are racist. Wow.
He's a nut job.
What a guy. When's the last time you thought you'd see something like this? A Republican president saying, you know what? I'm okay with potentially a tax increase. The president just putting this up on Truth Social 25, 30 minutes ago. Here it is. The problem with even a tiny tax increase for the rich, which I and all others would graciously accept in order to help the lower and middle income workers, is that the radical left Democrat lunatics would go around screaming, quote, read my lips, the fabled quote by George Bush the elder that is said to have cost him the election, the no new taxes line. No, Ross Perot cost him the election. In any event, Republicans should probably not do it, but I'm okay if they do. So Charlie Gasparino, our buddy at Fox Business Network, he put this up on X yesterday that Trump is open to the idea of raising the top income tax rate to 39.6%. That'd be about 2.5% increase from where it's at right now for those who earn $2.5 million or more. They also say that while it's designed to pay for a larger extension of the Trump tax cuts, no tax on tips and maybe no tax on Social Security. But it faces a tough road ahead in Congress. Now, this is a bad idea. Just right out of the gates, bad idea. You might argue there's a little 4D chess going on here. And the 4D chess may be, hey, if we actually are the party that slightly increases marginally the taxes on the super rich, the Democrats can't go around screaming about how they're just for the rich guy. Okay, they're going to do that anyway. It's all they've got. They have been playing from the same playbook. They're not like Andy Reid, all right? Andy Reid knows how to update his playbook. He doesn't stay behind the trend. That's how the Chiefs do what they do. Democrats don't update the playbook. The Republican Party has become the party of the working class. You're seeing that in the polling. You're seeing that at the voting booth. They are now the party of the average working voter. The Democrats are the party of the elite and the party of the lazy. Notice how I didn't say poor, because there's a lot of poor people who are hustlers who want to get out of poverty. But they're the party of the elites, the lazy, and I guess you would say illegal immigrants. You could probably add them to the mix as well.
Well, it sounds like that limit would hit a few in Congress.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure they're going to be in favor for that reason.
Well, that's true as well.
Or they'll redefine.
Yeah,
well, 2.5 million, that's only middle class.
Yeah.
That's just lower middle class.
Which it might be in Washington, D.C., based on the cost of living.
True that.
You can't send your kids to a nice private school and $2.5 million over there. But as Charlie Gasparino notes, this is likely to divide the GOP, and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson does not seem on board with it. See, I just don't want to encourage a world where we're picking and choosing winners and losers. I think you can have a world where Trump gets his no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and no tax on overtime. Because what happened when he cut taxes back in 2017? And this is something that I don't think they brag enough about. When they cut taxes in 2017, they cut the corporate rate and they cut the individual rate, right? The corporate rate we had was 28%. It was the highest in the modern world, and we cut it down the low 20s. And then we also cut the individual rates. The government started taking in more money than it had been taking in prior to the tax cuts. So this whole notion of if you cut taxes, you're defunding government programs, that's not true. It only happens if you're growing government faster than you're bringing in the money to fund the government. But it's not like they cut taxes and less money came into the Treasury. They actually had record revenues during Trump 1.0 after the tax cuts. Why? Because business expanded. There was growth in the private sector. More people were working. That means more money going back to the government. More people working means more money going to the feds because people are paying taxes. People are buying things, sales taxes, everything else. The revenues generate, the stronger the private sector is. So that has been, I think, an underappreciated element of the 2017 tax cuts. And I'm not expecting Democrats to even mention this, but I don't think Republicans talk enough about it and brag enough about it. But when Trump puts that line in there, I'm fine with a tiny tax increase for the rich to help the lower and middle income worker. That's kind of Bernie Sanders-esque to me. That line to me, I'm like, okay, somebody else giving more of their money to the government does not directly help somebody who's middle class or lower class. It just doesn't. Cut the taxes as much as you can for the middle or the lower class. Absolutely. I mean, the reality is too right now, the top 1% pay about 50% of the taxes. But yes, cut taxes for Social Security, overtime, no tax on tips. Do it all. In the end, you guys have a spending problem. Let's be clear. That's what you got. You got unsustainability in Social Security, in Medicaid, in Medicare. You got to get people who are abusing Medicaid off the system. Able-bodied men have got to be the first to go. Get them out. Get them back into the workforce. We got 7 million able-bodied men who are not in the workforce today, prime age, 25, 54, not disabled. Get them back into the workforce. Get them off the government dole. That's where the focus has to be. Not do we raise income taxes on those making $2.5 million by 2%, as if that's really going to have some major role in the income from the federal government. 913-408-7957. Pete, it's all political theater to keep the Democrats on their heels. You're right. And if I think that's part of this, so I'm on board with it. I think there's a part of this that is absolutely about keeping Democrats on their heels. And that is something that is very underappreciated about this president. Some will say that it's just Trump shooting off at the hip. But a big part of this, I agree, is probably about keeping Democrats on their heels. Because what are they possibly going to say now when they're the ones who have been lobbying as the party of the working class and the little guy and raise the taxes on the rich and the whole thing for decades now at this point? John's on KCMO in Topeka. What's up, John?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Trump 1.0, when he did those tax cuts the first time around, the company that I work for currently, when he evaluated how much he was saving in taxes on the company, he turned around and gave all the employees 23 to 25% raises.
Is that right?
And yes. And I mean, we got a significant bump. And he said, this is how much we're saving. I'm putting it out to you guys because you work for it.
That's
and
amazing.
So
that's a company right there, John. You're blessed to work for those folks.
Yes. I've been here for 16 years, and I love it.
That's amazing, man.
Couldn't work for a better group of people. So anyhow, the Trump tax cuts, we actually saw what Trump did in our paychecks, and it was significant. And anybody that says, oh, that didn't do anything for me, well, I'm sorry. Maybe your boss didn't share the wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyhow, it did significantly impact us. And I know another friend of mine owns a business. He said that he put another crew on because he was able to save enough money.
That's great.
So,
and that grows the economy, and they end up paying taxes. John, thank you, my man. That's well done. I appreciate that. Great work. Let's go to James in Olathe. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, Pete, I changed the message a little bit on this topic. I think the message ought to be, it's not that the super wealthy pay the extra few points of tax. It's what they'll do with that money if they don't. They'll buy things. They'll hire people. They'll do things to spur the economy. And we've seen what the government does with money when they've got it.
Yes, that's true as well.
I think that'd be a powerful message.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I'm with you there, James. I want to hear more from Trump about Doge, too. I really do. I think he should do a weekly press conference on all the big wins for Doge. I'd love to hear that. So one of the great shows from my youth, if you are a sports fan and you're a millennial, you remember the heyday of Pardon the Interruption with Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon, which was preceded by Around the Horn. It was early in the sports television debate format. It was fun. It moved. It had great pacing. It had great sports reporters on there. There were strong opinions. It was revolutionary. It was kind of like a 2000s version of the sports reporters. And I loved it as a young teenager. Well, it is going away. It is getting canceled by ESPN. So what they're doing is they're bringing on some of their old faces to, be on the final shows for Around the Horn. And yesterday, they had this moment with former ESPN analyst and writer Kate Fagan. She has not appeared on the show since September 24th of 2018. She was on the show for about 4 years. So they give the final word. Everyone gets to say some, final thing on the show, right? So what does Kate Fagan, who has not been on the show in 7 years, decide to do for her final word on Around the Horn? Talk about how great it is and how much we should be celebrating men in women's sports. Let's roll the tape.
Well, listen, being on this show has been a privilege and a platform, and I know it's my last time on it, and I want to say something worthy of that privilege and platform, and that is this, that trans kids deserve to play sports. Think about what you remember from your time playing sports. Like 99% of it is finding that jersey for the first time, your favorite number, community, joy, those high fives. It's that moment when you have a great play with a teammate. It's the feeling of belonging, and it does not know gender. And trans kids deserve that the same as everybody else does. And Tony, this space has, on Around the Horn, it's been about diversity and inclusion, lifting up new voices, because sports is joy and sports is humanity. And the more people who have that, the better. And Tony, I love you. So thanks for having me back on.
Well, Kate Fagan clearly doesn't love or care for young women. That's very clear. She may love Tony Reali. She probably would like Tony Reali more if he was pretending to be a girl. But she clearly does not care one bit about young women. Kate Fagan made it very clear. And it was disingenuous with the way she opened up her commentary anyway when she said this.
Well, listen, being on this show has been a privilege and a platform, and I know it's my last time on it, and I want to say something worthy of that privilege and platform, and that is this, that trans kids deserve to play sports.
Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They are allowed to play sports.
Yep.
They are allowed to play sports with the gender that they biologically are. They are allowed to play sports. They absolutely can play sports.
Her fondest wish can come true.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And if they want to play sports, they can play sports against the people they're supposed to play sports against, whether that's men or women. That's it. And yeah, we're going to protect women in sports. And it's no wonder that ESPN has to cancel shows like this that used to be so popular. I mean, I remember, like I said, I was a young teen watching this. The show debuted sometime in the early 2000s. I want to say like 02, 03. And, you know, those guys chopping it up on sports. And they would have females on there, too. Jackie McMullen, she was a writer for the Boston Globe. She was always fantastic. Mark's shaking his head. We all remember Jackie McMullen. She was great.
Oh, yeah.
But you didn't get this woke crap. And like everything else at ESPN, you know, they cared way too much about appeasing left-wing politics when that's not where most casual sports fans are that are going to lean heavily male. And this is a prime example of something Donald Trump has famously been saying for years.
Everything woke turns to shit, okay?
That's it. ESPN, and on a more micro level, around the horn, is a prime example of this. It is no wonder they are canceling this show. And if ESPN commentators like this, Kate Fagan, got their way, women's sports would not exist. It would be overrun by guys. And I guess that would make them happy. All right? It's amazing that for ESPN and this show that had a 20-plus year run, 4,900 episodes, how rich that a show that is about to get canceled will have this clip as its last and likely most memorable moment.
Everything woke turns to shit.
Stock market opening up this morning in the last couple of minutes. Dow up 114 points, S&P up 0.5%, same with the NASDAQ. After Trump hints that many trade deals are close. Many trade deals, he says, are on the horizon. So we'll see how the markets play out to wrap up the week here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Kansas City got itself a new city manager yesterday, and I just want to take you behind the scenes on this story for a couple of minutes. Mario Vasquez is his name. And this is somebody who was not considered the front runner for the job. The front runner was Kimiko Gilmore. She was the interim. It's like in sports when a team wants somebody to get a job, they will make them the interim coach. Now, sometimes the interim coach is the person who's just supposed to fall on the sword. But in this case, in Kansas City, Kimiko Gilmore was supposed to be the next city manager. She did not end up getting the job. And I told you last week I thought she was going to get the job. She did not. Instead, Mario Vasquez was picked yesterday as the Kansas City, Missouri city manager. And this is somebody who came on late in the process, who a lot of people on city council were impressed by, and then got in there yesterday on an 11-2 vote. Now, from what I understand, Mayor Q was Team Kimiko. But he didn't fight for it because he knew the votes were not there. And he didn't want this thing to become a big and ugly, drawn-out mess. So he went along with the majority of the city council, and he went with this guy, Mario Vasquez, who's worked for the city for a while. He's been a part of the Kansas City, Missouri city government for a while. But this also was because he was compelling. He was much better in one-on-ones. He was much better in his interview last week. And frankly, Kimiko Gilmore sounds like a very pleasant person, from what I understand, a very nice person, but she was not up for the job. She bombed out in the interview. It was cringeworthy. We played audio from it on Monday after I spent way too much time in the St. Louis airport listening to this stuff. I mean, she sounded like Kamala Harris. And she called things like putting up homeless people into hotels back in 2021, 2022. She called that a success.
So once I came back to the city as assistant city manager and deputy city manager, one of the areas that I had to cover was houselessness. And that was a ride that I will never, ever forget. Because we as staff and the community and some in the community had come together and had a plan for how to address houselessness. We were in COVID at one point, and there were hotels involved, and we housed people for the entire summer, and that was a win.
But no, that was a huge failure. And I know that line right there turned a lot of people off. She was already floundering. She was struggling. But that interview moment was the moment that I believe, and from what I hear, Kimiko Gilmore sunk herself as the person who could have been the next city manager in Kansas City, Missouri. And now we've got this guy, Mario Vasquez, and a lot of people told him not to apply. They said, dude, this thing is already baked into the cake. There are people who wanted the next city manager to be black because, well, frankly, they're racist. If you want somebody to get a job because of their skin color, you're a racist. And there's no way you're going to get it. And this guy got it. And he actually has a pretty compelling personal story. His family escaped Bolivia, came here to the United States, ended up in Wisconsin, and he's been in Kansas City for the last, couple of decades, I believe it is. So he's got a really good story. Of course, the Kansas City Star writes about him and says he was born in Bolivia, and he spent his entire adult life and career in Kansas City. As a child, he and his family moved to Wisconsin during what he called a time of economic distress and turmoil in their home country. Yeah, there were a bunch of commie freaks, just like what the Kansas City Star wants to bring to this town and this region and, frankly, the country for that matter. So they're going to leave that conveniently out of their piece in the Kansas City Star. But literally, the guy's family escaped communism in Bolivia. It's not going to make the media rounds outside of this show, but I find that to be a very compelling all-American story. And his family also came here and did it the right way. Legally, green card, became a U.S. citizen back in 2004. Now, I'm not saying this guy's a rock-ribbed conservative. I'm sure he's not, okay? You're not going to work and be the leader of Kansas City, Missouri, and be a conservative. Let's just be real here. Brian Platt wasn't the old city manager, but you know what he was? Common sense dude who got the job. Job is to fix the potholes, get the street lights replaced, remove the snow, pick up the trash. It's really not a sexy job. It's not intended to be. It's not a highly political job either. It's not about figuring out how to make sure we're putting more homeless people in the hotels that the government's paying for. It's not about being an activist. It's just about doing the basics and doing it well. So, the people that I hear from, the people that I trust, like this guy, and while I still think Brian Platt got totally screwed and got a raw deal and should still be the Kansas City, Missouri city manager, if this is the process that we're going to have, if these are the three finalists that we were going to have, Kimiko Gilmore, Mario Vasquez, and Pat Klein, it does sound like the best potential candidate ended up getting the job. So good for him. We'll be rooting for him, and we'll try to get him on the show soon on KCMO. 913-408-7957. In the meantime, we woke up to this news this morning that at 11th and Wyandotte, there was a man who was found dead in a parking garage in downtown Kansas City, right down the street from the Marriott Hotel. So you're talking about prime-time residential and commercial real estate in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. And this comes on the heels of a week where the mayor has gotten absolutely smoked by local media. He's had the tit for tat with Fox 4. The Daily Mail has written about Kansas City crime this week. The New York Post. John brought this up to us this morning. I didn't see it until he brought it up. The New York Post calling Kansas City filled with hooligans. Here's the headline. Hooligans on dirt bikes, ATVs, and souped-up cars overrun downtown Kansas City, terrorizing locals.
Yeah, you mentioned local media. I'm going, dude, we're worldwide. We hit the Big Apple and UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think John Sherman is thinking right now? If you're John Sherman and you want to invest for 50 years, long after he's gone, God bless him, he's 70 years old. He's not, going to be here for 50 years, okay? He's not. And you're thinking about, where am I going to invest a couple $1 billion for a baseball stadium? Do you trust this city enough to put it downtown? John Sherman's not a dumb man. You don't get as rich as John Sherman being a dumb man. But that would be the most insane conclusion to ever come to. Just would be. And it happens. I mean, people get, listen, we all get to that place in life where you're like, I got to have it. I got to have it. I got to have it. I got to have this house. I got to have this car. Got to buy this thing. But, man, sometimes you got to see the forest through the trees. And if the city of Kansas City, Missouri was a stock right now, would you buy it, would you hold it, or would you sell it? And we do have buy, sell, hold coming up here in a few minutes as well. What would you do? If you're John Sherman with a couple $1 billion that you got to spend, where are you spending it? Where are you investing it right now? I will cheer on Kansas City. And yes, Kansas City has many great things going for it. I'm not just sitting here trying to beat up on the city. I'm not. I really don't want to do that. It's not my intentions. It's not how I want things to go. But I'm also not going to sugarcoat it, right? I'm not going to, let the BS slide like too many people do in this town and just act like everything's going great. I mean, we're on cloud nine. I mean, yeah, we got the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have, frankly, masked a lot of problems. If the Chiefs were going 2-14 every year, I guess now 2-15 with a 17-game regular season, if they were going 2-15 every year and we didn't have these Super Bowl runs, I'll tell you right now, morale in this town would not be nearly what it is right now. That team has saved us when it comes to morale because there's a lot of things that are not trending in the right direction. So how is John Sherman looking at some of these headlines, Daily Mail pieces, New York Post pieces, and saying, yep, that makes a lot of sense? And I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't think they should end up, and they're not going to go to the Old Spring campus, despite what old Basset Hound Bob was telling you down the dial. They're not going to the Old Spring campus. I don't think they're coming to Kansas. North Kansas City seems like a great option. Could they extend the lease at the K? It's entirely possible they do that as well. But putting yourselves right in downtown in the crossroads in Washington Square Park, you get one, think about this, you get one incident. You had a dead guy in the parking garage at 11th and Wyandotte. Imagine coming back from the old ball game with the kids, walking out to the parking garage. Whoa, I turn your head. Close your eyes there, sonny boy. Dad, what's going on? What happened? Just close your eyes. I'll carry you to the car. I tell you what, you know where that doesn't happen? At the Truman Sports Complex. There might be a guy lying down, but that's because he's hammered. That's because he had too many beers at the game. Not because he's dead. Man, this is the kind of week. It's got to make John Sherman think twice. How could it not?